Good morning, everyone. Welcome to the First Unitarian Society of Milwaukee on this Indigenous Peoples Sunday. I'm Reverend Jennifer Nordstrom, and it's my honor to serve this congregation as your senior minister. Our opening words this morning are the poem Keep Still, Pause by Pablo Neruda. Now we will count to 12 and we will all keep still. For once on the face of the earth, let's not speak in any language. Let's stop for 1 second and not move our arms so much. It would be an exotic moment without rush, without engines. We would all be together in a sudden strangeness. Fishermen in the cold sea would not harm whales, and the man gathering salt would not look at his hurt hands. Those who prepare green wars, wars with gas, wars with fire, victories with no survivors, would put on clean clothes and walk about with their siblings in the shade, doing nothing. What I want should not be confused with total inactivity. Life is what it is about. I want no truck with death. If we were not so single-minded about keeping our lives moving and for once could do nothing, perhaps a huge silence might interrupt this sadness of never understanding ourselves and of threatening ourselves constantly with death. Perhaps the earth can teach us as when everything seems dead, but later proves to be alive. Now I'll count to 12, and you keep quiet, and then I'll go. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. Tristan is going to lead us in our opening hymn. Would you like us to rise or stay seated?
You can stay seated.
Okay.
So, I'll be teaching youth that did not learn listening by Leo Morris last week. I'll sing it line by line. So I'll sing a line and you sing a line. Okay? So, I'm listening. I am listening.
Spirit, speak to Thank you. I am Reverend Kimberly Tomczyk Carlson, and it is my honor to serve as your Minister of Religious Education. The story I have for you today is called This Land, the History of the Land We Are On, and is written by Ashley Fairbanks. This is my house. I live here with my family. Before us, another family lived here, and before that, another family lived here too, and another, and another. Before our house was here, there was another family with a different kind of house, a wigwam. There was a whole village full of families, laughing and cooking and playing, and there were even annoying little brothers. But when people came here from Europe, they forced most of those families to leave their home. All across our country, Native Americans had to leave everything they knew and move onto small pieces of land called reservations. But despite everything done to them, many Native American people still live in my city today. Like my friend TJ, he's Anishinaabe, and he lives with his grandma. TJ's grandma, Noko, taught me that before my ancestors arrived, this land was filled with indigenous people from coast to coast. I wonder if all of them made food as good as Noko does. Noko taught us a song to help us remember that indigenous people have always been here. They're still here wherever we go. This land is sacred, this land is living, from the Black Hills to Pueblo Canyon, from the swampy bayous to the salmon swimming, this land all has a history. Now, wherever my family goes somewhere, I ask, who lived here before the people who live here now? At the Grand Canyon, I learned that 8 tribes call it home. The Havasupai, Havapai'i, Paiute, Hopi, Zuni, Hulu'alopai, Apache, and Dean. Their relatives have lived here longer than anyone can remember, even the really old people. At the Golden Gate Bridge, I learned that the Ohlone have been fishing here for thousands of years. In New York City, I learned that the Lenape were here long before there were skyscrapers. Everywhere we go, there are indigenous people to learn from. So I keep singing, this land is sacred, this land is living. This land all has a history, even my backyard. The end. In honor of Indigenous Peoples Day, which is tomorrow, I share with you our First Church land acknowledgement. This land was originally populated by many indigenous people who lived and thrived in an interdependent relationship with the land and other beings here, long before white colonial settlement. We acknowledge in Milwaukee that we are on the traditional Potawatomi, Ho-Chunk, Menominee homeland along the southwest shores of Michigami, North America's largest system of freshwater lakes, where the Milwaukee, Menominee, and Kinnickinnic rivers meet, and the people of Wisconsin's sovereign Anishinaabe, Ho-Chunk, Menominee, Oneida, and Mohican nations remain present. These indigenous people are still here and are still connected to the land. We acknowledge the Native people of Wisconsin with the intention of grounding us in the truth of our shared history and the goal of healing from the harm that has been done and continues.
I invite you to join me in a time of contemplation now, which will be followed by silence, followed by the seated singing of hymn 123, Spirit of Life. Take a moment and just find yourself where you are. Maybe you count to 12 like Pablo Neruda, or maybe you feel your breath moving in and out of your body. Do what you need to do to get settled in. Spirit of life and love, Holy One of our being and our becoming, that which is sacred within, among, and beyond us. Be with us in silence. Be with us in the depths. Hold us in any swirling worries that arise. Ground us down into the interconnectedness of all that is. May we practice getting comfortable in silence, sinking into it so deeply that we open to the ground of being below it. Sinking so deeply into that that we rise up again with love for all that is. May that love hold us and all beings, comforting those who are suffering, helping us be present to make a more loving future. May it be so.
Good morning, everyone. Welcome to the First Unitarian Society of Milwaukee. I'm Trudy Watt, and I'm pleased to serve as your worship associate. We are a faith community of many identities. We welcome people of all genders, sexualities, ages, races, ethnicities, histories, and bodies. We welcome your mind, your heart, and your spirit. We welcome all you are carrying with you today and all your heart longs to set down. We also welcome all the folks watching online, hello, on YouTube, as we live stream this service. We also enthusiastically welcome guests joining us today. If you are a visiting guest, we invite you to fill out a welcome card located in the pew rack in front of you and drop it in the offering plates that will come around in a few minutes. After the service, please join us for a social hour across the hall in the Leanhouse Common Room. A few accessibility notes. You can find hearing assist devices and large print hymnals and orders of service at the back of the sanctuary, as well as worship activity bags for children and anyone who wants them. There is a fragrance-free area in the front right pews. And if you're watching online, you can enable YouTube's closed captioning on your viewing device. We have 3 announcements today. Today at 1 p.m. in the sanctuary, join us for a screening of Bad River, a film that details the Bad River tribe's decades-long fight to shut down the Line 5 oil pipeline that travels through their land in Wisconsin on its journey from Canada to Michigan. Join First Church and UU The Vote the afternoons of Saturday, November 2nd and Sunday, November 3rd, as we have conversations with our neighbors leading up to the November election. We'll be knocking on doors and offer lunch and a canvas training before launching from First Church. Whether you're an experienced canvasser or going to take the plunge for the first time, we want you. Sign up at the link in your order of service or at the social justice table during coffee hour. And finally, a new show is up in the common room today. The artist Curtis Crane will be in coffee hour after the second service. I welcome you to share in our First Church worship and purpose by inviting you to join me in a unison affirmation of our mission, which is printed in your order of service. We gather to nurture the spirit, engage the mind, and inspire action. Every week, we have an opportunity to practice our values through sharing our resources. Our pledges are at the core of our spiritual practice of generosity. In addition, the church shares half of all the non-pledged cash in our offering plate with a community organization, practicing our value of interdependence. Today, we share the plate with Defend the Bad River Fund. These donations mean safeguarding a vital ecosystem and ensuring a sustainable future for future generations. The offering will now be gratefully received as we sing seated our children's recessional hymn 112, Do You Hear? I invite all children, youth, and RE volunteers to sing the first verses of the hymn and then follow Reverend Kimberly to the Leanhouse Common Room and then downstairs for religious education. If your child needs to check in for RE, please accompany them. May the practice of giving bring us joy.
Good morning, everyone. By now, many of you will have read or heard about upcoming plans for my retirement on June 30th, 2025. This is happy, sad news, as many pieces of news can be more than one thing at once. My last day in this pulpit will be our flowers ceremony on June 1st. The happy news is that I am in good health. And that's great, and I'm looking forward to the joys of retirement. And those of you, I must say, who have shown me your own robust and creative retirements, you know who you are, unknowingly played some small part in my decision. And of course, this is sad news because after June 30th, I will no longer be your minister. I will set down the role of active ministry. After June 30th, I will no longer be preaching, doing pastoral care, or officiating weddings or memorial services. Some of you may be shocked or surprised at this news. Some of you do not believe that I will turn 65 years old next summer, but it is true. Many of you are happy for me. Some of you may be sad. And even some of that grief might show up at times as anger, or the understandable but irrational thought that I cannot retire until after you die. But isn't the alternative so much better? To be alive. It's okay to have all the feelings and to have a variety of feelings at the same time. Most any transition is happy, sad. Most any transition contains an end and a beginning. Following best practices after I retire, I will be away from you and First Church for a year or two, and I will be declining your invitations to social events. Please don't take it personally. This is a best practice to create space for you to connect with your next minister. So that will be happening after June 30th. But it's not happening yet. This is going back on, folks. Yeah, because we've got the gift of time over the next 8 months to work together, to celebrate and appreciate each other, to mend any hurts we may have caused one another, to embody our UU values, and to serve this beloved community together. I am filled with gratitude and joy for the great honor of what will be 16 years serving as your associate minister and 28 years of active ministry. It's been a good run, and any tears you hear in my voice or see on my face are simply because I love you so much. So as we express our care and love for one another, over the next 8 months, I do have one request of you, just one. Please do not hug me. Just go like this, or go like this. We learned how to do this during virtual church, right? And then you can save the real hugs for my retirement party, of which there will be one. You want to tell them about that, Jennifer?
I know we have so much love for our dear Dina here, and may we each take the time to feel our feelings and process them, knowing that we have the time together with Reverend Dina to move through all of it. In the coming weeks, I will be pulling together a search committee for a new acting assistant minister who we will hire for a set period of time, probably 3 years. Acting means that that position is temporary, but at the end of the period of time, we can hire the person long-term if it works out. Assistant means that the position will be hired. So the congregation is not going to vote on calling this acting assistant minister. It also means less responsibility and less, probably, experience than our beloved associate minister. We are going to be doing some restructuring on the ministerial team after Reverend Dina leaves, so the new person is not going to be the new Dina. Not that they ever could. Reverend Kimberly will be taking on more responsibility in the ministry, including adult spiritual development and congregational vision setting. This search team is going to move on the UUA's settled search calendar, which means we'll be advertising the position in December, doing interviews in January and February, hopefully making and having an offer accepted in April, and then starting with a new acting assistant minister August 1st, 2025. All of that is going to be happening while Dina is still here. Yay! Preaching and teaching and leading in all of the areas of her powerful ministry. And we get to celebrate with her and party with her and express our deep gratitude for her ministry with us. So let's just take a breath now and rest in that gratitude for Reverend Dina's ministry and all the time we still have together. Will you please rise in body or spirit while we sing a hymn of gratitude in our teal hymnal, number 1010. We'll sing "We Give Thanks" 3 times through.
I've meditated regularly for about 11 years, though I sometimes skip a few weeks or months. Even with my imperfect practice, I see mindful awareness as a constant part of my life, a part of my operating system, always running in the background. I believe that awareness practices like meditation have helped me to become a better listener. My confidence in this belief may have even allowed me to believe that I'm a better listener than I really am. The pandemic shattered this illusion. A few months into lockdown, I often felt uncontrollable anxiety. I lost interest in favorite activities and had frequent nightmares about endless Zoom calls. But I soldiered on, not listening well, not to myself, and probably not to others. A breakthrough in this situation came wrapped in professional achievement. This is one of the channels I seem always to be able to hear, no matter the circumstances. I wrote a grant proposal to participate in a year-long applied compassion training, where I would develop a curriculum to integrate mindfulness practice into the design classroom. During that training, I met Robert Cusick, a grief counselor and meditation teacher. As a brief aside, not even a part of the main curriculum for the day, Robert shared an invaluable technique for deep listening. He advised focusing 95% on the person in front of you and 5% on the sensation of your left foot to stay grounded. It sounds simple, but it had both an immediate and a profound lasting effect on me. Paying 5% of my attention to my left foot changed the way I was listening right away. Once I had learned this technique, I couldn't unlearn it, so to speak. The thought to anchor into my left foot started popping into my head almost automatically once I knew about it, and the habit hasn't left me since. This almost automatic activation in situations that required deep listening played an enormous role in my ability to attend to my own needs, as well as those of my many students during those very hard and scary parts of the pandemic lockdown. For example, it's not unusual in any school year for 1 or 2 students to encounter a life-altering crisis that means we need to work together to create an accommodation plan. At the peak of the lockdown, in contrast, I had to create a spreadsheet just to keep track of the number of students at any given time whose circumstances were so challenging that I feared for their safety. The foot trick helped me to be fully present in conversations with those students about the loss of loved ones, depression, isolation, anxiety, and despair. Those things were arising in me and also in my students, who I wanted to help in any way that I could. When I use the foot trick, I feel a little bit like a balloon, anchored to the ground through my foot, but otherwise floating freely in the full field of attention I open towards the other person. It helps me to be fully available to the person I'm listening to, but also to stay just grounded enough in my own experience that I don't get completely lost in the listening or the desire to help. Through this one simple technique, I became more available to listen to myself, even as perfectionism and a drive towards high achievement collided with the pandemic and the life or death circumstances my students were sharing with me. The foot trick reveals my own limits and reminds me that I can only help others when I also consider my own needs. So I'm thinking about my foot right now, but only a little bit. How about you?
In her book, Joy, Unspeakable Contemplative Practices of the Black Church, Reverend Dr. Barbara Holmes writes, "The activism that ignited the freedom movements had contemplative practices at their center. The very act of passive resistance can be described as stillness in the midst of turmoil. You cannot face German shepherds and fire hoses with your own resources. There must be God and stillness at the very center of your being. Otherwise, you will spiral into the violence that threatens you." Contemplation and action are in a relationship of symbiosis with one another. They are neither opposed nor in competition. Contemplation grounds and directs our action, and action is the outward motion required by the depths of contemplation. In the midst of this busy election season, we need contemplation, spiritual practice, and silence, even more than in seasons of ease. As the Buddhist saying goes, you should meditate for 20 minutes a day, unless you are too busy, and then you should meditate for an hour. When we're in times of stress, when, say, we are facing the loss of a beloved 16 years serving associate minister, or when, say, we are in the midst of a busy election, or when, say, fascism is on the rise, or when, say, you're worried about the future of democracy and you care about trans people and queer people, when you care about bodily autonomy and healthcare and freedom, when, say, there's a war, when, say, there's 2, there's 3, there's 5, when there's ethnic cleansing, when the bad news brigade just keeps bringing more and more pigeons of threat and despair, you should meditate for an hour, maybe 2. Finding silence. Finding the silence that is deep within the Spirit gives us strength. It grounds our spirits in the wholeness of all being so that we have the perseverance to face all of those threats squarely and still dip into a deep well of love. There is a deep well of love inside every human being, beneath the silence that lies within, a well that goes down into the depths of our individual being and then comes up outside into the collective consciousness of all being. You do not have to knock on that door on your own if you have a deep spiritual practice with silence. You do not have to face the fire hoses alone if you have contemplative practice. You do not have to have the conversation with your uncle alone or stare down the specter of fascism alone, because beneath the well of silence within is a trap door that opens to all being. And by going down into it, you connect with all that is. In Louise Erdrich's coming-of-age novel, The Game of Silence, when the adults needed to talk about something serious in the Ojibwe tribe of the 1850s, Or when they needed to lead a ceremony, they had the children play a game of silence, where the child who was able to stay silent the longest won a prize. The heroine of the story, 9-year-old Omakayas, usually managed to win the game of silence, but she had to work at it. Erdrich writes, "Words, words, 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 pressing up from Omakayas' stomach and trembling on her lips, words buzzing in her throat caught like bees, banging in her head, harsh words. Angry words, sounds boiling up in her like sap, wild things she couldn't let out." Omakayas was young and yet had the gift of dreaming, of connecting with the larger spirit in ways that would help her people. But when she was 9, she was just learning the game of silence. In the novel, Omakayas admired how the elder, Old Tallow, was comfortable enough with silence that she let silence do the work for her. Omakayas was still struggling to find the silence amidst the buzzing, but for Old Tallow, it seemed easy. She just said nothing. Nothing. She let the silence between them fill the air. Unlike other people, Omakayas noticed, silence did not make Old Tallow uncomfortable. The warrior lady simply stood and smoked her pipe. The smoke drifted serenely in wavering fangs from each corner of her mouth. She was thinking. In this coming-of-age novel, silence is as much a character as words are. It is a series of coming-of-age books like Laura Ingalls Wilder's Little House on the Prairie, except this book mirrors that series of stories with its own tales about Omakayas growing up in the 1850s when her Ojibwe family and community had to leave their home on Lake Superior because of pioneers like Wilder and travel into the unknown. Silence was the game the children played as their family packed up and left their home, journeying to a new life in a place not of their choosing. This world, this present moment, it can be painful. It is full of losses and cruelties. Our systems are designed, in fact, to stack up cruelties in marginalized communities. Living with the truth of that in the past, in the present, and the threat of it in the future can make this a scary place to be. It can make silence a scary place to be. But the present moment, sitting in what is true and real right now, this moment is the only place that we are alive. Our human nature squirms away from it with worries. There is a part within each of us that, like Omakayas, is buzzing with words, 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 words in our throats, banging in our heads or boiling in our veins. And to be present with all that buzzing and banging and yelling, to be present and just sit with it, takes practice. And maybe that practice starts young in the form of a game, or maybe it starts late with the call to the meditation cushion or the long walk outside. In January of 2016, Quaker author Parker Palmer spent a week in the woods of northern Wisconsin on a retreat with himself and a Quaker practice of silence. In Notes from a Week in the Woods, Parker writes, "Woke up at 2 a.m. and found myself regretting some things I got wrong over the past 77 years. Wished I had been kinder or braver or less self-centered than I was, and had a hard time remembering the things I got right. Knowing that the 2 a.m. mind is almost always deranged, I got up at 4 a.m., dressed, made some coffee, stood out in the dark and cold for a bit, and saw Venus glowing low in the southeast. The goddess of love. That helped." Throughout his week in the woods, Palmer goes back and forth between painful and pleasant thoughts, internal guests of rage or shame, as well as love or mercy. He strives to practice Mevlana Rumi's advice and welcome all those guests without prejudice or attachment. He finds solace in the work of Thomas Merton, who wrote, "I am thrown into contradiction. To realize it is mercy. To accept it is love. And to help others do the same is compassion." Part of the pain of silence, of being present now with all of the buzz in mind and heart, is having to deal with contradictions. Contradictions in ourselves, having to be with old pains and shames and worries for the future. In silence, everything that is unresolved in our hearts comes alive and shouts for our attention. Those contradictions that are in our hearts and lives shout, but the contradictions in the world sometimes shout as well. We have to live with the moments that we didn't live our values and face the times we didn't live up to our own expectations or others. And if we can face that, then sometimes the world comes rushing in and shouts about the long wrongs of land theft or white supremacy or genocide or fascism. It can get hot and troubled in the world of silence. Silence contains oceans, though. It contains those contradictions as well as truth. It contains love and shame, loss and hope. But beneath all the eddies of the mind, behind the buzzing bees of thoughts and words, deep in the well of silence, beneath the well, lies the holy, opening up into the world of all that is. And there, the contradictions resolve themselves in wholeness, in the larger love that holds all that is, in the wisdom of each singular part, realizing their connection to every single other part in an interconnected web of all being that is wrapped in compassion. It is this deeper knowing below the silence, that vibrating truth of inextricable interconnection that propels us back up, out of silence and into action renewed. Silence is not just for silence's sake. It renews us in the truth of all being so that we can once again align our actions with love and renewed strength to act in the world with love for all that is. Silence aligns our words with our actions, with our values, with the truth of the whole. We say the land acknowledgement here in worship, recognizing our lives are lived on land that the U.S. government stole from Native peoples, and then we pair that truth with material resources flowing to Native people struggling for land rights and actions to support those land rights. We also dip into the well of silence to listen to the land itself, to our interconnection with water and earth and spirit, and return again to the world to protect the water and earth and spirit. When we drop down beneath the worries and the words into silence, and then through the door, beneath the silence into all that is, we return with clarity and strength and perseverance to keep aligning our actions with the love at the ground of being, knowing that we are just one small part of the interdependent web, and our job is to just keep moving towards freedom and justice and mutual thriving for all beings. So today, whether you join the Bad River screening film here at 1 p.m., or you grab a postcard and tell Governor Evers to deny the petition or deny the permit, reroute Line 5, or you sign up to knock on doors for democracy or learn about any of the myriad actions you can take for democracy just this week, or when you sit listening to a loved one who's struggling, letting your foot be an anchor and your heart be a balloon, or you parent your little ones with groundedness and deep compassion for yourself and them. Today, let silence's power lead you to action aligned with love and truth. May it be so. Dear ones, today may we find a deep well of silence within, and let its power lead us to live with love for all that is. Will you please rise in body or spirit for our closing hymn number 352, Find a Stillness.